Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop for the last time. Alright, so welcome to the extended version of the shop tour. There is a shorter version of this video. I will put a link in the description below. It's like only 6 or 7 minutes. This is a much longer version if you're really interested in all the details. And I'll try to cover as much as I can. So this shop is a 71 square foot shop. It is 4.5 feet across from stud to stud on the inside, and then about 14 or 15 long, and the roof height is about 6 foot, a little over 6 foot on the inside. It's sort of a lean-to style, originally built as a shed, and I sort of took it over and made it into a workshop. This is the table saw, which is a Delta table saw, kind of an old school but a reliable saw. The entire top of this was rusted out when I got to it. Replaced everything, cleaned everything up. Also took these off, and they were kind of an ugly green color. I took them off and I cleaned up all the rust and I painted them white. I don't know if I like the white, but they're white now. The fence on this saw is the regular T-square fence with the cam on the other side. I just added a little plywood on the inside and then some corian over here, and I found that the corian slides nice. I'll probably make another one at some point, but this has worked well for a long time. The hinges on the back used to be for a flip-up outfeed table that is no longer attached. I do a lot of work outside, so it's also got casters on here. If you look over here, that's all my lathe tools. There's a Longworth chuck there, a bunch of different saw blades. I probably got 20 saw blades on this rack. Here, this is a zero clearance for a thin kerf. This is a regular kerf, and then this is for the dado stack. This is just a piece of plastic. It's a glass fiber reinforced piece of plastic, which the initial cut probably dulled my blade, now that I think about it, cutting through glass fiber, but it seemed to work fine. It's got the saw kind of has doesn't have a full depth insert. So this is actually two pieces laminated together. It's one for the bottom to keep it rigid, and then one for the top to sit in the insert section. It's a little bit difficult to make inserts. And I've got a few different things up here. This is a chuck, a Nova chuck for the lathe. I've got two different lathe chucks. This one I got pretty recently though, which is why it's in this nice little box. Some other table saw jig stuff. This is a tapered jig. So basically you can just spread this out and put this pin in here and lock whatever taper you want to cut on here. That's pretty handy. I've got some corner clamps up here. There's a bunch of band clamps and stuff for soldering and electrical work, which I do a little of. If we come over here, we can look at all these toolboxes. They're sort of labeled so you can see what they say. There's extra parts for stuff, more lathe, sanding, just a bunch of different supplies and other stuff. This ammo can sort of just houses random pieces of metal and plastic and whatever I think I might use, and I'll probably move that somewhere else soon, but that's what it's used for right now. I've also got a power strip on this side, so when I'm working out here I can plug all the stuff into power. This entire shop really is run off of a power strip. You see this, which isn't proper at all, but I'm only running one tool at a time usually, plus the lights. So it's got this extension cord here, this green one, comes all the way out and then all the way around this building to a plug. And there's no way to really wire this in. I'd have to pull code for it and do a bunch of stuff through the brick, because that's what I've got on the other side of the wall. So I've chosen not to do that, and I've just been running this off of an extension cord for an extended period of time, which isn't great for anything really, but it has worked. So most of my battery operated power tools are rigid. This is a rigid circular saw. I keep it here because I don't really use it inside the shop much. It's usually outside is the only place I use it. So let's walk around the side of the shop here, and we will take a look inside. So this is sort of like a double door that I've got going on here. It's a weird configuration. It's this hinged with this, so it kind of folds out. I needed a better way to get in here. You can kind of see it. I needed a better way to get in here and get the tools in and out than loading them all through that door. Try not to make you too dizzy here with the camera moves. I'm going to close this, and we will take a look at where we started here. So basically you see the whole thing is pretty much stacked to the rafters with whatever I can fit in it. which is kind of the mode when you work in a lot of different mediums and do a lot of different stuff. You just have to have more stuff. It kind of just comes with it. Up here I've got a face shield for whatever I might need a face shield for, but I use it for the lathe a lot. I also have a mesh face shield that goes on here that I use for using the chainsaw and other things like that. Got a dado and molding set is in there. There's a dovetail jig. These are different sleds for the table saw to do different things. Come down here, this is some box joint jigs that go on the table saw sleds. 45-degree sled, that's a segmenting sled. That's a spline cutting sled. There's a little dowel maker down there. Pin drilling and the circle cutting jig, and that's just for hanging stuff. I do a lot of little projects, so I have a lot of little clamps and a lot of little hanging. That's what these are too. You can just put as many pins in them as you want, and you can just hang whatever you need to hang from them. Keychains or pens or I don't know, whatever other whatever things you might need to hang. Going along this wall, this is sort of like the hand tool wall. So I've got sort of a bunch of different saws: keyhole saw, flush cut saw, miter saw. There's some hack saws underneath here. I have a lot of trash in here. I have like 3 garbage cans for this small shop. It's because I find that I get in a workflow doing sort of production stuff sometimes, and I don't want to walk across the room to throw something away. I bought one of these the other day. I haven't really had a chance to use it. It's kind of a plastic profiler thing, so you can find the profile, which I don't do that much since I don't do much work in homes, but I got a pretty cheap deal on it, so I figured it might come in handy at some point. This is a little tool to measure RPM, which I don't have to do that often, but sometimes when I work on tools or modify them or something, I need to measure that, so that's there. Don't know why it's there, but it fits pretty good in that little space between the 2x4s. I didn't build this, so yeah, I'm not accountable for anything that's going on here. So then there's just a bunch of hand tools, basically. Screwdrivers and wrenches and hammers and measuring tools. Nothing really special, nothing super expensive. Some chisels and card scrapers. Hand plane. I'm missing quite a few things from this wall because I am in the middle of a project somewhere else and I just don't have the stuff here. There's some safety stuff here, so there's a mask in here and some glasses, utensils to write with. This is kind of an interesting old school tool. A lot of the older guys have probably seen this. It's sort of a push drill, but it's nice. I stuck this, it doesn't really go on there, but I stuck this countersink bit on there, so I can just, whenever I drill a hole, I can actually just kind of ream the hole. And it doesn't work amazing, but it's kind of fun to do either way. And if we swing it around to the other side here, you can see all my clamps on the wall here. And I do use a lot of clamps since I'm often working on 10 or 12 projects at once in this small shop. I also have clamps right above my head here, and clamps, a bunch of spring clamps here, and I'm missing like half of these because once again I'm in the middle of a different project. And then also I have clamps down here. I've got a rigid router here that I've used a couple times. It's brand new, just got that one. And once again I've got a lot of stuff up in the rafters here. So this is just dowels and pins and all kinds of things like that. Plastic bags, steel wool. Then you come over here and it's all finish on this wall. So that wall goes all the way down behind the toolbox, and they're finished all the way down. These are the finishes I use most often. That stuff is rare if I have to match a color or do a different project or something. Down here on the ground I've got my router, and it's just kind of a little router table. You can see it's pretty small. You can just put it on top of a table. It works really well. It's very sturdy. This is like 1 1/4 melamine sheets that I had, and I just made them into this, and it's very stout. I think I've got a Ryobi 2 horsepower router in there, 2.5 maybe. I don't know. It's a pretty heavy duty router, but this works great. And then I've got this grinder, which is a Harbor Freight grinder. I don't think they sell this model anymore. It's a slow speed. So this is a fast wheel. This is a slow wheel. It's a wet wheel. I also tapped a hole in this so I can put a strop on the other side. So if I'm sharpening a knife or something, I can go right from the wet wheel to the strop if I would like to do that, which this wheel is a little coarse, so going from the wheel to the strop usually requires a couple steps in between, but it works pretty good. For sharpening lathe tools, I built this little jig right here, and it's got a couple different attachments that go on the top there. I just welded that all together. I've also got one on this side. It's sort of just got a flat stand right now just because I sort of use it for drill bits most often. But this one also adjusts. It's probably tightened down pretty good. Let's see. So you can really adjust it, dial it in, and I can build whatever attachments for that I like, and that actually works really well. This is a little 20-pound anvil. I think it's 20 pounds. It doesn't say. All it says is China on it. It's 20 or 25 pounds. My friend got me this at a flea market, I think, and this has been a lifesaver a number of times. I did not know how often I would use a little anvil, but I use this thing all the time. And then I've got the toolbox. The toolbox sort of is marked with all of the different stuff that's inside of it. It just makes it easy to, until you get that muscle memory down, makes it easy to know where everything's at. And then I built this little top for it because I wasn't really satisfied with all the drawers. I needed more space. And this sort of has all the stuff for the grinder. It's got a battery operated grinder here. This is a multi-tool. This is what I was using for an anvil before, which is just a sledgehammer head. And it's got a map torch in there, so a few things there. So there's some stuff for camera filming. Mostly GoPro type stuff. Also a bunch of marking tools, calipers, dividers, things like that. Then I've got everything for the router. So this is just a trim router, which is what I find myself using the most. Just to do roundovers and chamfers. I got a chamfer bit in it now, but I have lots of different router bits. I had a little bit of a router bit obsession for a second. Just the different profiles and everything I was a little fascinated by it. And so I have some weird, interesting router bits in there. Sockets, which is not all that interesting. And then drill bits. This is like a cheap Chinese drill bit set. All the gold ones are the Chinese ones. And none of them are really hardened all the way through for some reason. So it's kind of a mix of both, and you can use them a few times, which is still worth it, I think. You just can't use them on anything hard. They won't drill through metal. And this is all safety stuff, so glasses and masks and filters and whatever else. Sometimes people join me in the shop, so it's important for me to have some gear for them to use as well. And then I've got a little kind of diagramming station where I can post diagrams of projects I'm working on, or ideas I've got going on, or run some measurements or whatever else. I only have one vise in this shop, which is this one, and this one just clamps to the bench. And this has been pretty good, actually, surprisingly. It's really handy and has worked really well. I've got some steel wool up there, gloves, drill, impact driver, and then this one is a dedicated just drill, mostly just a countersink drill, because it's like a Harbor Freight and Drill Master, which means you have no control over what's happening. It just drills. That's the only thing it does. It just drills, and yeah, just keep it at full speed and keep something controllable on it. So you can see my shelves are all pretty full of stuff. I got a bunch of little lights or whatever that I kind of use when I'm filming or I need to see something close up. Lots of little parts for stuff. I try to keep everything pretty well labeled because I'll just forget what's in the thing and I'll have to look at it every time that I need something different. This is an interesting thing that I never thought that I would like or use, but I find myself picking them up here and there. They're Rockler bench cookies. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but these are actually pretty good. They just don't allow things to slide. You can see he's using, kind of see it. He's kind of using a router with that on top of it, and that's pretty accurate. They don't slide. I was surprised how well they work. And just nuts and bolts, and why I have things that I don't use very often here, I don't know why. It would make more sense to have things like glue that I use all the time rather than giant bolts, which I hardly ever use. My favorite measuring tape, which is just this little Stanley lever lock. I like it because you can pull out the tape and it holds its place, and then you can pull the trigger and it closes. This read the temperature at some point, but I think the batteries died. I haven't been out here in a little while. Also, I've got this one as well, which tells me right now we're probably about 90 degrees, which I think is pretty close. I've got some dies and some business cards that I now use as glue spreaders, all kinds of different glue, hand sanitizer, which I probably could use right now. There's epoxy up there and some wood putty. This is kind of like, this is color putty, which is a little different than wood putty. get you one that doesn't have this stuff on it. It's not designed to ever dry. It's designed to kind of flex with wood. So it's sort of like a carpenter type deal, where if you have something black, you shoot some brad nails through it and cover it up, and then this will flex with it and won't ever crack. But you can mix that with glue or epoxy or super glue and tint it. So kind of interesting. I do get a lot of bugs here in the summer months, so I do have bug repellent, spray adhesive, brake parts cleaner that I use to clean parts for tools and stuff. Some other random things that I've just been using recently, and that kind of brings us to the workbench. I have to step to the side because I can't get you in view if I try to step back. So it's a 2x4 workbench with a T-track in it, and then I made these little hold downs to go in the T-track. It's just sort of just a piece of plastic, which doesn't seem like it would hold a lot of weight, but I've torqued at least a couple 100 pounds down on these and never had a problem at all. And they kind of swivel back and forth, sort of like maybe the aluminum ones you've seen. And inside the workbench, it's basically sandpaper, and then I've got some brushes and finishing stuff in here. If you go underneath the workbench, like I said, every part of this place is covered in stuff. I've got yoga mats here, which come in handy. Seems kind of weird, but you can get yoga mats super cheap. They're great for when you're finishing a project and you don't want to damage the project, or you're worried about bruising it or damaging the finish or something like that. They're really handy for that, just to lay out on the workbench. You can lay out multiples if you got a really big project like that. I like it better than shelf liner. It's sort of a scrap bin. It's got a whole bunch of stuff in it. They're all just random cutoffs. It's actually 2 scrap bins. They're sort of stacked. This one has sort of more plywood material, and this is sort of more hardwood, except for this piece that probably just got thrown in here the other day when I was fixing something. And we got some extra glue and my dust collector, which is the only dust collector I could fit in this shop, which I don't think works. I think it died not too long ago. So there's that. And if we look from this side, I've got a spare drill in the back there. I've got a plunge router. I just bought this cross vise from a mechanic shop, machine shop. And I haven't had a chance to really clean it up or use it, which is why it looks filthy. And I got a little mini lathe down under here. And then I've got parts for all kinds of different stuff. Once again, everything's labeled, so I don't have to take too long to look at it, and I can work more efficiently. But I keep everything from all the machine screws from every electronic thing I take apart to all plastic pieces. I keep all kinds of like random plastic and random metal pieces. And this stuff, it's weird because it seems like it's junk, and you think it's junk initially, but I've had things happen where I need something weird specific, some specific spring or something weird, and so I just have it. I don't like some of the stuff is weird. I think that's for like a antenna for some, I don't know, don't even know, but but stuff comes in handy, so I keep it, and it just keeps coming in handy, which tells me I need to keep keeping it, I guess. I got a little first aid kit here because cuts do happen in the shop. And let's see, there's a little scrap bin here too. This obviously is piled up with a bunch of stuff. And there's sort of a rag bin here, making sure I dry out all my rags before I put them in there. And I've got sort of specialty drill bits. So I've got brad plane bits and step bits, and then there's Forstner bits up here. And super glue, which I use a lot of super glue. I turn pens and other things, and super glue is just super handy in the shop. Baking soda for the super glue, because baking soda is a kicker for super glue. It'll make it harden up, basically turn it into plastic really fast. And I've got tape, which I'm also missing. Any spare spots you see in any of these shelves is me probably missing something because it's on the other build right now. And if we come up here, I've got some interesting stuff up here. So this is actually a dollar store handsaw, one that I got from the dollar store. I was like, why do you have a dollar store handsaw? It's because I plan to make a video on how good the dollar store handsaw can be. Because I took one of these and I made it into like a real saw, and I love it. I don't know why exactly. I don't know if it's the metal. I don't know what it is about that. But I really like the dollar store handsaw with a new handle on it and sharpened properly. It actually functions very well. So I was going to do a video on that at some point. And I've got a few other things. This is kind of a cool box. This box is something that I was making for a friend of mine a few years back. Obviously it never really got finished, and I'll probably finish it at some point. I just kind of lost steam with it a little bit. But it's a carved octopus. This is just MDF that I've wrapped the side with and glued it together, and you can't even tell that it's two pieces. This guy will come right off of here because he's not attached. And you can see on the bottom that it's this MDF that's been painted. This sort of the box. It's a French fit box. Let's see if I can open it with one hand here, just like that. I think the inside is, I think it's cherry, and then maple. Yeah, maple is the main part of the box, and cherry is the inside. And then those are the other pieces for the legs. So the legs would really wrap around to the whole thing. Once this is done, it'll kind of wrap down, whatever. And I'll probably get around to finishing at some point. I just haven't got there yet. But that's a cool project that I was working on, have been working on when I get a minute here and there. And some cottonwood pieces that I really liked that have been sort of resawn into panels to make boxes. Like I said, I'm always working on a million things, so there's always scrap parts and pieces of different stuff all over the place. My secret book of plans and goodies. Again, these are blanks for scroll saw lamps, and there's nothing cut out on them, just waiting to be cut. Some parts for electrical stuff. I do a little bit of small electrical stuff, and stuff for the pneumatic guns, which are down here. So I've got Forstner bits and the airbrush, which I use sometimes. I make carbide tools and resell them for friends and stuff, so I've got a bunch of carbide bits. This is all stuff for making jewelry, so earrings and keychains and necklaces, things like that. Then I've got my air tools here. This goes on that sander, and because this shop's so small, things kind of just fit wherever they gotta fit, so they are not always together in the same place. And this is some segment pieces, as you can see, for a project that I was working on. I do a lot of curious testing of different things, trying different stuff, because how else do we learn stuff? And this is kind of like a globe bowl that I am still in process on. As you can see, a lot of things in my shop are sort of in process. I've also been making frames for glasses, and these are bent laminated glasses, so they conform to your face. These are for an optometrist office that I'm working with, they're prototypes to do actual prescription glasses in real handmade wood frames. They're all pressed together with sort of different dyes that I've got to create bent laminations, and I have a bunch of sort of different styles that I've made. These ones have the stems even cut with them, sort of a retro style. So I've been working on that periodically here and there too. These are bent laminated pieces that haven't been cut yet, so you can see they're sort of, this is probably a maple walnut, I think. Yeah, so you can cut them out of that on the scroll saw. It turns out pretty cool. I've got a 8-inch Craftsman drill press. This is a combination sander. I like this one too. It's underpowered. Most Harbor Freight tools are pretty underpowered, but I do enjoy the sander. It's nice to have the belt, so you can. It's something about the belt is just faster than the large belt. I don't know what it is. This sander I use for small work, so usually when I'm shaping small pieces, jewelry and things like that, it's a little easier than this bigger one. Then I also tapped a hole in this spindle. See a theme here. Take one good idea and just repeat it. And I've got a buffer on the end of this, so whatever I bring off of here, little parts, I can just buff them on that. And that works pretty well. Let's see, there's more sandpaper here. I used to work for a company that sold parts for tools and equipment and stuff, and I would get a really good deal on sandpaper, so I have a bunch of the same, which is the worst sandpaper, by the way. They probably gave you a good deal because nobody else wanted to buy it. This one isn't that bad, but the red Bosch, don't ever buy the red Bosch sandpaper. Horrible. Worst sandpaper I've ever used. The grits come off everywhere, and it's red all over your project. It stains it. It's just, I don't understand. I also sharpen my own saw blades. I've got a saw blade sharpener, drill bit sharpener that I never use, belts for the belt sander, fire extinguisher that I've never had to use, luckily, 20-inch Shopsmith Scroll Saw, which is my favorite tool. It gets the most use probably than anything else. I do a lot of scroll saw work. And we've got more sort of small-time electrical stuff and some scroll saw blades down there. Let's see, what else did I miss? I'm sure I missed something because there's so much stuff in here. Let's see, anything interesting? This is a Black & Decker belt sander. There's a saber saw. I think it's a Craftsman saber saw in here. This springy looking thing over here is it's got a chuck on it, and it's so you can drill holes at an angle, at a perfect angle. I don't like it very much. It's pretty cheap, and I probably wouldn't have bought it if I would have known better, but live and learn. I still do use it sometimes. That's a biscuit joiner, a porter cable biscuit joiner. Let's see, some weird stuff. You'll see, as you look around, you'll see a lot of different weird things. It's a keychain design that I'm working on. There's this little cutout, which I made another one just like this, a brother to this one, and it's a box, and I just hollowed out the center. This keychain has it's a inlay, it's a metal inlay, so it's kind of a test, so to speak. And then I have a little TV in here, just so I can watch something or listen to something. There are various speakers around, and I built this little amplifier. I also have like various LED strips. Lighting is very difficult in here. Here's like an LED light that I built. It kind of just retracts into the ceiling, so when I need to get really close to my work on one of the sanders, I can do that and see pretty clearly. It's flickering, which means that it probably needs to be rewired, fixed at some point. There's a tarp up there. Once again, some random metal stuff, so it's like odd metal stuff and brackets. That's a rotary tool. It's very similar to like a rotary. This one I think is a Craftsman. There's a bunch of large rags and small rags in here. This is sharpening stuff, hose clamps. I've got sort of a sharpening block here where I've got sandpaper up to 2000 grit. Can sharpen chisels and stuff on that. There's lathe chisels. Seems like I have a lot of lathe chisels, and I do because I just keep upgrading because I'm unsatisfied with what I've got. This is sort of an old ruler, yardstick. It's not a yardstick. It's I don't remember what it's called, Lufkin something. It's like fold-out ruler. I don't know. It's cool, so it's just sitting there. And some interesting little measuring tools here. You've probably seen these. This is a bear square, and it measures all kinds of different angles. I don't really like it, but it's kind of interesting. A lot of these tools I get because I go buy just toolboxes full of tools because I want one or two and it's worth it to me. And the rest of the tools I don't really care about, but I keep them around because they might come in handy. So this is one of these. You've probably seen one of these. Find the correct angle for stuff. And then I've got some tin foil and some stretch wrap and some saran wrap. And those just come in handy when I'm trying to wrap something up. Once again, I do make stuff for clients, so I have a bunch of little small containers, which are good when you've got like paint samples or stain, things like that you just need a little extra. You know, you're going to need to do a touch-up later on. Small hinges and hardware. I've got a ton of small hardware for different random things. I've got a bunch of these little cutting boards too. They're just like nylon cutting boards, and they're super handy because you can't damage them. You can use a chisel on them, and you can't unless you put them through a saw. You can't really hurt them, which is handy. You can even stain on them and stuff, and the stain will come right off. I think I just got them at IKEA for a couple bucks. But tons of little hinges and handles and latches, and I don't know. Once again, the fascination continues with I find a thing and then I acquire a lot of it, and then I have it at my disposal. There's not too much else I can show you. Paper towel rack up there. This is a little air cleaner. It's actually a bathroom fan that I sort of repurposed into this air cleaner, and it just pulls all the air. You can see it actually does pull the dust through there. It'll clean this place in about 2 minutes, which is surprising for that little bathroom fan, but it does a great job for what it is. Any bigger space and it probably wouldn't work very well. I've also got the ceiling kind of insulated a little bit. I just put some insulation up here just to hold the heat in or the cold in. Whenever I'm working, I've got a little portable heater and a little portable AC unit that I use just so I don't cook or I don't freeze. Some long hinges up here, and I think that's probably about it. I've got a few tools outside, so we can actually head outside and I can show you those. And on the handle wall, if you're curious, I mean, I guess I might as well cover it all if I'm covering it all. So you can see all the stuff here if you wanted to see it in a little closer, more detail. I really like old tools. vintage stuff. Like this is cool to me. Some old random screwdriver, no brand on it. It doesn't even have a brand on the metal, but it's still interesting. A couple Bridgeport screwdrivers. I'd like to have the whole Bridgeport collection, but they're a little tricky to find. And some of this stuff was just somebody cherished it for a lot of years. This awl I bought in a toolbox full of some stuff, and this thing is so smooth. Somebody's gotten a lot of use out of that, and I just find that stuff's pretty amazing. Somebody can use something for a long time. I've got random different hammers. This is kind of an upholstery hammer, ball peen hammer, mallet, obviously. Can't remember exactly what this one's called, what kind of hammer it is, but I use it as sort of a picture hanging hammer because the brackets I use for picture hanging work perfect with this little end here, and it's nice and light, and you don't need a lot of force for a lot of that delicate work. I've got a few different punches and things like that. Once again, none of my tools are I don't have that many really expensive tools. All this stuff I've gotten at a discount of, I would say, probably 50% or less. So I don't really go out and buy new tools. Harbor Freight's probably the only place I actually might buy a new tool from, and that's pretty rare. So out here I've got a lathe. It's a Power Max drum sander, Delta planer, and a Craftsman 4-inch joiner on the bottom. And I built this little rolling, well, it's not little, it's a rolling stand for them, so I can use them all kind of in sequence. This is a Craftsman 15-inch swivel head lathe, variable speed. And I don't love this one because it's sort of a belt drive. So you can't actually change the speed. You have to have it spinning, then you can change the speed, and it's kind of a weird system. But this whole head does swivel out. And this stuff has been outside for a long time. I check this like every 6 months just to make sure that there's no rust on it. And those bedways are they're pretty clean for being out here, just waxed for 6 months. I mean, these have been sitting outside for 3 or 4 years now with the covers on them, and I made the covers for them too. So yeah, it works good. Everybody told me I couldn't. I had a radial arm saw out here at one point, and everybody told me it was going to rust out, and nope, hasn't rusted out. Everything's still fine. On the drum sander, I do have an extra, like a plastic bag around it, just because it is an expensive piece of equipment and I don't want to hurt it. And then I've got this little cabinet underneath that I have a bunch of wood scraps in. So the entire cabinet, without the lathe on the top, probably weighs a good 300-400 pounds. It's completely full of material. And then I've got this weird bucket thing here, it's an outboard stand, so I can I bored this out to fit my tool holder or my tool rest, and then I can have that outboard here, swivel the head, and I can work on things bigger than 15 inches. I think they rate this for, I think it's 20 inches outboard, but I think the biggest thing I put on it is like 22 or 24, and I will probably be pushing those limits again at some point because that's what I do. And then this under the tarp is just some wood that's getting transported right now. And I don't really have that much left to show you. Like I said, there are little speakers everywhere, so they're just basically computer speakers all wired together, just so I have a little bit of sound so I can listen to something. So yeah, that's the shop. If you have any questions about anything going on in here, any tools you want to see closer, anything like that, let me know in the comments. I'll try to get back to you the best I can, and that's about it. So if you follow my Instagram, you probably know that for the last year and a half I've been building a new shop that's about 6 times the size of this one. It's going to afford me bigger projects, more creative ideas, and way better videos. So I'm going to be closing this shop down, taking everything out of it, and putting in some shelves and some other things just for material storage. So with this new shop, I've done everything from the ground up, from pouring concrete all the way to the finished building. I've filmed the entire process, and I'll be putting out sequential videos showing you the process on my channel soon. So stay tuned, be sure to subscribe, lots of interesting, cool new projects and adventures coming up. And until the next video, you guys have a good one. I gotta start doing that. But I use it as kind of a picture hanging hammer. I can't remember exactly what it's called. This is probably brake parts cleaner. It's just like a it's sort of like a, I probably can't get it undone with one hand. This is a It's about a 2x4 workbench, and I put these I put the T-tracks in it. Good God. Obviously some glue or something in there. Just moving everything to the new shop. You stupid. So if you follow my Instagram, you know that. So if you follow my Instagram, that's probably good enough.